Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and today I'm going to be comparing two 3D printers, the Bambu Lab A1 and the Flashforge Adventurer 5M. Now, before I even do anything else, I know that these printers are fundamentally different because one is a bed slinger and the other one is a Core XY printer. But I have done quite a few videos about the 5M, and I've done a few videos about the Bambu Lab A1 so far. And I've had some people ask me which printer would I prefer, which printer is the best, which printer should they get when you compare those two. So I thought that I would just rattle off some thoughts in a comparison about those two printers here in this laid back sort of video podcast format where it's nice and cool and air conditioned in here, instead of grabbing both printers and taking them out to my other space where I record, which is my garage that is not climate controlled in there, and basically just sweat my butt off for the next, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes. So that's not something that I thought would be pretty fun to do. So we're just going to hang back and chill and do it in here. So you can watch this if you want, or if you just want to listen to it, you can do that too. I'm going to try not to do anything that's too video intensive, but there might be a clip here or there that I throw in to just try to drive a point home. So just starting off right off the bat, some really basic specs about both printers. So the Adventurer 5M has a below average size for its build volume. It's 220 millimeters cubed, so that's all the way around. And that is below what is considered the average for a printer of its type. And the Bambu Lab A1, on the other hand, it's bigger all the way around. Not too much bigger. It's 256 millimeters cubed. So you're not getting a whole lot of extra space, but it's definitely more up to an industry standard. And hopefully, whatever the next 5M is going to be, maybe they can make that build plate a little bit bigger. But that may or may not be an issue for you depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build large things, and of course you're going to need a larger build plate. But if you're making smaller things, then it's not going to really matter too much unless you're trying to just fit a bunch of small things on there and you want to have enough room to fit on an additional 4 or 5, whatever it is that you're trying to print, just so you can be more productive. That extra build size that the A1 gives you may just put you over the edge to that printer. So that's like the first thing. Some of the other specs are similar. For example, the max speed on the 5M goes up to 600 millimeters per second. The travel speed on the A1 is like 500. And when you're talking about the nozzle temperature on the 5M, it goes up to 280 degrees Celsius, whereas the A1's maximum temperature, 300 degrees Celsius. Now, is that a huge deal? Again, it depends on what you need it for. For most materials, especially not the ones that are considered, like more exotic, like polycarbonate or something, then getting a max temperature of 280 is going to be enough for most people, I think. You're just going to be printing with PLA, PETG, TPU. Even if you were to get the enclosure and put that together because you want to print like ASA or ABS or something like that, 280 is going to be good enough to allow you to do that. But if you want to kick it up a notch and have just a little bit more flexibility, then the 300 degrees Celsius hot end is going to get you there. But in most cases, in my opinion, you won't need to go that high. The maximum bed temp on the A1 is 100 degrees Celsius. Again, for most applications, you won't need to go that high, but is there in case you need it to be that high. And outside of some very cool like engineering type things like the automatic flow calibration that the A1 can do, they're comparable printers, spec wise, and it just on paper at least, and you just have to sort of get into the actual performance of them and how it responds to the things that the spec sheet says that they can do, and that's when you'll start seeing some of the differences start to come out. But another cool thing about both of them, they both have filament run out sensors, and that's great. Stop the print automatically if you run out of filament on accident. But the A1 also has something that's pretty cool. They got this filament detection for tangles. And so if you have, and this happens, a spool of filament that has a tangle in it, maybe it came like that straight from the factory, it's going to sense that that's going on, and it's not just going to continue to try to print. It's going to stop it, and a little message is going to come up on the screen, and it's going to tell you, hey, you might want to check this out. I've detected a tangle. Fix that, and then you can try it again. If that happens on the 5M, then hey, you're out of luck. Nothing's going to happen. It's just going to keep on trying to print, but nothing's coming out. It has absolutely no idea what's going on. So that's a nice little feature that I think the A1 has. That is a very nice quality of life feature. One of those things that I think other printers should definitely incorporate in the future. It definitely should be a standard thing going forward, because tangles in filament is a very common thing. So being able to detect that is something that I think all printers should be able to do moving forward. All right, so now let's get in a little bit more into the nitty gritty of things. I'm gonna try to break this down into different categories. First category, the setup process and the ease of setup for both printers. And I'm happy to tell you that both printers are easy to set up. However, the Adventure 5M is faster to set up. Sort of by design. It's a Core XY printer. Everything is pretty much put together. Oh, more like 98%. The frame itself is already there. You don't have to connect anything as far as the frame goes. The print head is there. You're fine in that regard. The only thing you have to put on is the screen that's on the front, which is the most fiddly part because it has that cable ribbon that you have to connect to the screen. I can see if that might give some people some anxiety because you're like, don't break the ribbon, but it's not bad. Also, the filament spool that goes on the back, easy enough. Put it there, 2 screws, boom, boom, you're done. PTFE tube, stick one end, stick the other one in the other end, you're done. And you just remove some screws from the bed that holds it in place during shipping, and that just frees it up. And after you do that, you plug it in. That's it. You're done. You let it run through some calibrations. You'll be ready to print. The A1 is more involved. Again, it's not complicated to put up, but when you get in the box, it's flat packed. The bed is separate from the gantry. You have to put that gantry, which is all combined. It's just, that one piece. You stick it down onto the bed, the platform. Well, not the bed, but the platform that the bed is on. But the thing about the A1 is, even though you are connecting a handful of things, such as the gantry to the main platform, and you're putting on the filament cutter, and there's some wires that you have to connect at the bottom, the thought that goes in, that they put into the assembly process, is really good. And you can literally feel it when you put that gantry down onto the platform and you see that it goes in a very specific way. And when you get it in there, it just sits flush and there's no second guessing it. It's just a perfect fit. And when it comes to putting in the screws, they put these green circles around the places where those screws are supposed to go. So it's like you can't mess it up. You see that green circle? Put the screws that we tell you to put in those green circles. All right, it's easy peasy. It's simple. And then even when you're trying to connect those wires on the bottom of it, they're like the perfect length. So you're not trying to, be afraid that you're going to stretch the wire a little bit too much. Is it supposed to reach this socket? Is it not supposed to reach the socket? Everything is just nice and accurate. It's very accurate, and that's going to go into the rest of the printer that I'll talk about a little bit later. And you can take your time with that assembly process, and it might take you 20, maybe 30 minutes, maybe even longer, depending on how fast you or slow you want to go. But no matter how long it takes, it's not a complicated process, but it will take longer. I would say twice as long at least as the Adventure 5M. But like I said, it's not difficult. And they both run through their own calibration once you turn it on. It's going to calibrate itself. It's going to be doing some vibration compensation. It's going to do some auto leveling. The whole calibration process is longer for the A1 because it does all these different types of movements. It has the Y axis doing its thing. It will have the X axis doing its thing. It's going to do a lot of vibrations and you're going to hear a lot of cool noises or whatever. But then after that, everything is done. You're good to go. So the setup process for both of them, like I said, they're both easy, but if I have to give an edge to one, it'll be the 5M because it's faster to set up, and it's by design with the Core XY thing. But once you get it set up, then you got the user interface. And the user interface for both printers, I think, is very user friendly. They don't feel like they've been designed by an engineer and you need to have some type of deeper special knowledge to understand what's going on. Everything is very well laid out. And on the 5M, I also like the fact that they give you little explanations for some of the things that you're looking at, like filament swaps. They're telling you what each function does. You can go into the menu system and it'll also give you some additional information or definitions about some other things that you might want to know as well. And it's just very easy to work your way around the different settings, setting up your Wi-Fi, all that stuff. It's easy to do on the 5M. And it's also easy to do on the Bambu Lab printer as well. But while you're looking through that user interface, I do have to give the edge to the A1 when it comes to the actual screen. I think that the screen quality is better, it's higher resolution, it's a better feeling screen. The screen on the A1 feels more similar to the screen on your smartphone, the capacitive touchscreen. The screen on the 5M feels like one of those older cell phones with the resistive touchscreen. Like you might remember the ones that had like the little membrane under it, and that means that your taps are not going to be as accurate. Sometimes I feel like I need to press harder in a certain spot in order for it to recognize my finger presses. And it works a lot better if you have something to poke at it, like a stylus. So it's kind of like that. It's like that old world technology screen. And the colors aren't as vibrant. It's in color, but it's very simple, kind of muted. It works, but it's not as good as the Bambu Lab A1 screen. They're both functional, but the A1 screen is better. Okay, that's fine. Now let's talk about I think this is kind of interesting because this is something that I don't think comes up a whole lot with 3D printers. Ecosystem. Ecosystem of the A1 is really good right now. The Flashforge Adventure 5M has no ecosystem. Maybe you don't care about ecosystems, but I'm going to tell you about it just in case you are. So what I mean about that is Bambu Lab has managed to take its printer and make a whole playground around it. The experience goes from the printer to your computer to your phone. They have what they call Maker World. Maker World is a website in which you can get a whole lot of cool 3D prints. Some place where you can just go to see what other people have made and then you remake it yourself on your own printer. But it goes a step further because if you have the Bambu Studio Slicer, which you should when you have a Bambu Lab printer, you set up your account, you log in with Maker World, and when you see these different prints that you want, you can use the exact same profile that the creator of those prints made for their 3D model. So if you want to have results that are most similar to what they did exactly, they bake that in to the files that they upload. So you can just click on it from your web browser, or you can also access Maker World directly from the slicer, the Bambu Studio Slicer, or you can access it from your phone using the Bambu Handy app, and you can use the exact same profiles that they use. And then you can end up getting close to or exactly the same results that they did on their prints. And that's really, really handy, especially if you're just kind of getting started and you're not digging deep into all the different settings. It makes it a lot easier to get started. And then in addition to just being able to find your files and printing stuff, they take it one step further by even allowing you to use these really easy tools to make your own things, such as making your own puzzle using a picture that you choose yourself, or you can make your own customized sign. And you can use templates for that sign. You can customize the text, you can customize the way it looks, but you can use a template as well, or you can just make your whole thing from scratch. And it's these online browser tools that you can use. So not only are you making other people's stuff, but they also made it easy for you to make your own things yourself and then get those printed out on your printer. That is fantastic. And in addition to that, they also provide hardware for certain things that you can print that you can't all print in 3D. For example, here's something that came with the combo pack that I have. So, this is a mouse. I use this mouse all the time. The shell of the mouse I printed, but the inside, the mechanics, the scroll wheel, the control board, that comes in a kit that Bambu Lab sells. So you can print out the parts and then you can get the mechanical and electrical type stuff from them, and then you can combine the two together. They got this mouse here, they have something for like a lamp kit, and they have all these things in a nice section so that you can just go and just experiment with stuff and buy the hardware to use with your 3D printed parts. I think that that's really thoughtful. And that just kind of brings the whole experience together, the 3D printing aspect of it, the design part of it, and then a little bit of the tinkering mechanical side of it as well when it comes to the actual objects that you're printing. So it's really great that they're building that out. And, Flashforge just gives you the printer. So there's no ecosystem around it. So if that's something that interests you, then Bambu Lab all the way, they give you that. All right, so now let's talk about the actual printing process. Now, fortunately, both printers work really well with very similar slicing software. You got Bambu Studio, and then you have Orca Slicer, or you can use Orca Flashforge, which is this slightly alternate version of Orca Slicer that Flashforge created just for their printers. And it's running a slightly outdated version of Orca Slicer, but at the same time, they also put in additional features that you can't find in the basic Orca Slicer. For example, in Orca Flashforge, they give you profiles for all of their nozzles: 0.25, 0.4, 0.6, and 0.8. In the regular Orca Slicer, they don't provide those profiles by default. The other thing that they do is in Orca Flashforge, you can send prints via Wi-Fi over to your printer, and then you can tell the printer to auto level before it starts printing. You can only do that in Orca Flashforge, but you can't do that in Orca Slicer. So you kind of have to decide which one you want to use. You can use Orca Slicer if you just want the most up-to-date features all around in like 3D printing in general, or you can use Orca Flashforge, which doesn't have all of the up-to-date features that Bambu or that Orca Slicer has, but gives you some Flashforge specific upgrades. Bambu Studio is just like Orca Slicer. Most things are the same, but they just have some things here and there that are just specific to Bambu Lab, such as letting you use the AMS to paint your different colors. But I'm not going to really talk about the AMS in this video because the AMS is an optional accessory that you can purchase and it's not really about the core printer itself. It's a very important part of the printer, but at least for right now, I'm just going to just talk about the regular core printers and not the additional accessories. So the slicing thing is, very similar, extremely similar between the two. But the biggest difference that I have been experiencing with both of these printers has to do with consistency and print quality. The Flashforge Venture 5M, most of the time it gives me some nice prints, very nice prints, and is generally reliable. However, I don't completely trust it when I'm just starting to put down those first layers. It's always a good idea to monitor any printer when it's putting down the first layer to make sure that it sticks, because if it doesn't stick and instead it sticks to the nozzle, then you can get that horrible blob, or you can just make a mess of spaghetti all over your build station, and you don't want to do that. But I feel a lot more confident when I'm using the A1 because as of right now, I've never had a first layer fail on me. I've never had anything come off of the bed as those first layers were going down. I still keep my eye on it, but I turn my back on it as well, and I feel more confident that it's going to get the job done. I'm going to put in a little clip here, exactly what I'm talking about. So, for example, when I was printing this clock, those first layers required these thin lines all the way around the build plate. And these thin lines, they needed to be there. They indicate it indicates the minutes of the clock. So I couldn't have one of those just come off the build plate. It's integral to the actual build. And as it was laying that down, they were all just perfect lines. Or when I printed this Spider-Man wall art, it was literally drawing the outline of Spider-Man in black across the entire build plate. And something like that, I can't afford to have one of those lines come off and drag and mess up, because you need that there for this build to actually work. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, man, this is just perfect. It's doing such a fantastic job of laying down that first layer. There's been many times with the Flashforge printer where that first layer, for some reason, it just doesn't work out. And I can take the build plate and, even if I wash it or whatever, I'm like, why isn't this working properly? And it will, but sometimes it doesn't. So I have to keep my eye on it. I have to make sure that when it's making its first purge line, that it doesn't drag that purge into the print area. Or when it's printing the skirt, it's not taking a piece of the filament that's sticking up from the skirt and bringing that into the print area, and then that could mess things up too. Now, it's not a, I don't want anyone to think that, the 5M is a bad printer, because it's not. I would not have made so many videos about it if it was a bad printer. I think it's a very good printer, but I'm just telling you my real experience with it when things have not gone well. And I have less faith that it will get things right the first time compared to the A1, because my experience with that printer so far is it has gotten it right the first time, every time. Probably won't be that way all the time, but right now is giving me that confidence of knowing that I can trust that it's going to be okay the vast majority of the time. I don't always have to, watch over it like a prison guard. So, with that being said, the layers that these printers lay down, first layers, assuming that everything works out good, they're very, very nice first layers. I'll say that the A1 gets an edge in first layer quality and consistency. A good example of looking at good first layers is when I do like Forge prints, because that usually starts off as a straight up square, and that square has to be filled in with filament as that first layer. And when I'm doing that on the 5M, it's very, very nice. The automatic Z offset is really good. I cannot pull it apart like it's a what do you call those things? accordion. It's not like an accordion. I can't do that with it. It's like a nice plastic sheet of paper that you can pull and pull and pull. It's not going to come apart. So that Z offset, the automatic calibration stuff, it usually works really, really well. I don't even want to say usually, because when it does it perfectly. I've never, ever, ever, ever had to alter the Z offset on the Adventurer 5M. Never had to do that. And I hope that I never will have to do that, because it's been doing its job as it should. But like I said, if I had to get a little bit of an edge, just as far as the consistency goes, I will give that edge to the 8.1. The printing speed, the 5M is faster. I get the perception that it's faster because when that first layer is done, it starts to rip. I mean, that tool head's moving around, it's shaking, it's doing its thing. I'm like, man, this thing is crazy. But the A1, it's still fast, but it's like kind of chill about it, just kind of lay back. If it has to shake and do stuff, it will, but, it's a much more subdued kind of a speed. And it's also a lot quieter. The A1 is a lot quieter. With the 5M, when those fans are on, they are blowing. It is a jet engine. But for the A1, I barely hear the fan. I'll hear it kicking up for some areas of a print, but then it'll just die right back down. I'll look at the temperature on the screen and I'll see that I'm running like 230 degrees Celsius, but I can't really hear that fan moving. But once you get above a certain level with the 5M, that fan kicks on. It's going to stay on, and it is going to demand your attention in the room. So if you're looking for a quiet printer, that A1 is so much quieter, especially those fans. And then the whole printer, it just seems like it's so elegant in its execution when it's printing. It's kind of like, hey, I'm just gonna do my thing over here. You just relax a little bit. It's not up there, like it doesn't sound like there's robots working away in the background. It's very tame, and I like that. It doesn't make a whole lot of noise. The actual print quality of the prints, when they are done, they both produce some very nice prints. Very nice prints. I've printed so many different things on the 5M that you can see here on my channel. And I've printed just figures. I've printed boxes. I've printed just all kinds of things. Like, I'm looking at things here that I've printed on the 5M, and I'm happy with how these things turn out. The surface quality is good. I don't see like imperfections, ton of like very noticeable bad imperfections on the surface quality. I never felt like I needed to turn on ironing in the slicer in order to get a better looking top layer. It does its job very, very well, as does the A1. They both make very nice prints, but just the A1 is just more consistent with getting it right the first time. Software, I got to give it to the A1 as far as the reliability of the software, because I've run into some bugs with the 5M with the software. The biggest issue that I've had with it, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happened enough to make me think twice. Sometimes it will pause the print right in the middle, like I wouldn't even call it a pause. It just stops. It's moving along, doing its thing, and then it'll just stop. And the nozzle temperature will stay the same. The bed temperature will stay the same, but nothing's happening. It's just stopped there. And I can go to the screen and I can pause the print and it'll respond. It'll go to its position when I pause. But then when I go to resume, it'll go right back to that exact same position and it won't do anything. It's just stuck, like it doesn't know what to do. So I can kill the power to the printer, turn it back on, and then it'll do the power loss recovery. Like, hey, the power is interrupted. Do you want to continue the print? I'll say, yeah. And it'll go through its motions. It'll go right back to its same position. It'll heat up. and then it either won't do anything from there, or it'll say print complete, and then it'll just go to its default position whenever prints are completed, even though the print is not complete. I don't know why it does that, but my assumption is that it has something to do with sending the files over Wi-Fi. It's never happened when I have files on USB, but sometimes if I send a file over Wi-Fi, everything seems like it's fine, but then it might stop. So I'm at the point where I don't send the file over Wi-Fi if it's a print that's going to take longer than, say, an hour and a half. Or if it's something that's going to take a decent amount of filament, I don't want to take that risk, and I will just use the USB stick because it's never stopped on me when I did that. And I don't know if that's something that they've fixed in like the firmware or something. And that kind of brings me to my next point. I am definitely afraid of firmware now. As a lot of you probably know, when the firmware before last, the one that introduced Orca Flashforge and the Flash Maker app, a lot of people had issues with that firmware. It would kill their ability to do Wi-Fi prints. It introduced some errors that people had never seen before. It was a generally at least on Facebook and Reddit and those type of places, it wasn't very well received, and people were complaining about it. And fortunately, I didn't have any problems with that firmware, and FlashForge did come out with an update to that firmware that seemed to fix the things that were broken, because I'm not hearing issues about the firmware anymore. But it scared me that it happened, and for that reason, I have not updated to the latest firmware, because I'm like, you know what? If it's working okay, I'm not going to upgrade unless there's a big feature for that next upgrade. Now, you can roll back the firmware, and there's a pin post on the FlashForge official users Facebook page that can tell you how to roll back the firmware if you need to. But yeah, ever since I got the printer, I've been reading things about people who updated firmware and had bad things happen. And the pausing of the prints has been the worst thing. One time I got the move queue overflow error. I only got it once, and it never happened again. But yeah, I am afraid to send files over Wi-Fi that are going to take a long time, or it's going to use a lot of filament, because I don't want to run into that issue. On the A1, I haven't experienced something quite like that, but I have experienced something. So the printer does a good job of telling you when something needs to be addressed. It'll tell you when you should, for example, lube the rails. It'll tell you like, hey, it's time to give the y-axis rails a little bit of lubrication oil. So it's good that it keeps you up on that. But the thing that I see from time to time, it'll tell me that the my x-axis belt may need to be tightened. It'll say something about the vibration compensation, the frequency is out of whack, and you probably need to tighten that belt. It was doing that since I got the printer, and at first I thought it was because I had it on a pretty wobbly table, and maybe it was sensing that, and they're like it was like the resonance frequency, I think that's what it said. But when I put it on a more sturdier table, I would still have that error, but the prints would not be affected. The print still looked great. And then sometimes that error wouldn't be there. But I did decide to tighten up the belt anyway. It's a really easy process, extremely easy, takes seconds to tighten the belt. And after I did that and I ran the calibration again, it didn't go away. I turned the printer off, I turned it back on, I started to print, it goes through all those same calibration steps, and then it goes away. Everything is fine. Right now, when I run prints, it doesn't show me that error, everything is fine. I don't know why it's doing that, but it didn't affect the print quality at all, so I'm not sure what was going on with that. But even on the Bambu Lab A1, I have not updated to the latest firmware. because again, I've been reading other people's experiences and they're saying that ever since they updated to the latest firmware, they're not getting as good quality prints as they used to. They're seeing some layer shifts, they're seeing some extrusion issues. People who have not the A1 but the like the P series and the X series, they're complaining about how the slicer update now makes their fans move a lot faster when it doesn't need to go faster, and just kind of stuff like that. And fortunately, Bamboo Lab gives you an easy way to downgrade to an earlier firmware if you want. So it's great that they do that, but still it makes me afraid to update to the latest firmware, and I'm glad that I didn't, because I so far haven't heard anything really good about it. But then again, people tend to complain more than they give, praise. But at the same time, the printer was working just fine for me, so I don't want to change anything, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I'm just going to let other people test it. So now let's talk about price, money. That's like one of the most important things. The 5M, in my opinion, is still one of, if not the best values in 3D printing out there today. $299 US. That's the price that it is most of the time. It is an absolute value for that money. It's a steal for that money. And Flashforge has really just, I don't know how they did it, but this is the spot that they need to be in. There's a lot of competition out there, and the things that this printer can do and the quality that it can put out, even with the bad things that I pointed out about it, $299 is still an amazing price, and they need to stick with that. If you want the 5M, it's going to cost you more, $399. So it's $100 more. But for that $100 more, it's not like you're just getting incremental upgrades. You're getting a machine that I personally think is more reliable in its print quality. It is quieter, it is larger, and as of right now, it is a better glimpse into the future of 3D printing because of that AMS, that multicolor filament system. It gives you more options to do what you want to do. As of right now, the Flashforge does not have that option, the multicolor filament system or whatever. We hope that it will be, and that maybe that'll be announced at some point this year. But as of right now, no such thing exists. And like I said, I don't want to talk about the AMS too much, because I just want to keep it about the core printers. But at the same time, I can't ignore it, because it does add to the overall quality of the machine and the options to do things that you couldn't do otherwise. And also in the way of like accessories and like replacing parts and stuff like that, you can do both. Flashforge sells replacement parts. Bamboo Lab sells replacement parts, so you can fix some of the more common things that might go wrong with the printer. And as far as the nozzles are concerned, they both use quick change nozzles, although the Flashforge is a quicker change nozzle. With the Flashforge, all you do is just hold those two red tabs on the print head, pull the nozzle out, and then grab your new nozzle, stick it right back up there. You gotta get it in the right spot. You gotta, just you work with it a little bit. You don't force it in. It's supposed to be nice and smooth, but once you get used to it, it's extremely quick. The Bamboo Lab A1 is also quick, but it's not as quick, because you need to take off the front cover of the print head, which is just it clips on, so you can just take it off easily. And then you just remove, you have to pull apart these two like clasps that hold the print head in place. It's like holding it like that. So you just undo those. It's magnetic. You pull the whole thing out, stick the new printer, the new nozzle right there. It's magnetic. Again, just like the Flashforge, you need to get it in the exact right spot so that you can close those clasps around it nice and smooth, and then you're good to go. Oh, and you also have to take off like the little silicone sock. You need to take that off too and then put it back on, but it just pretty much finds its place when you're trying to put it back on. So it's easy to. So it's faster to do it on the Flashforge printer, but it's not so much faster than the Bamboo Lab printer. And the cost for changing those nozzles. It's more than twice as expensive for the Flashforge. The nozzles are going to cost you between $30 and $40, whereas Bambu Lab is like $12. You can choose from their 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8. They also have hardened steel variants for some of their nozzles. On the 5M, you just have hardened steel 6 millimeter, 0.6 millimeter, and hardened steel 0.8 millimeter nozzles. Those are your options. They are both very easy to deal with. So you just kind of have to decide which method that you prefer, but it is cheaper to go with the A1 and its nozzles. So that's great that they do it that way. But overall, which printer do I think is the best? Drum roll, which is the better printer? The A1 is the better printer. Like pound for pound, everything that I mentioned from print quality and consistency to the ecosystem, I think that it is the better printer. It doesn't mean that the 5M is a bad printer. That is so far from the truth. It's so far from the truth, it's a lie, because it is a really, really good printer. Like I said, I made a ton of videos about it. I still advocate for it, and I still highly recommend it. But two things can be true at the same time. It can be a great printer, but another printer can be the better printer. So it really kind of just boils down to what's in your pocket. What are you willing to spend? So if you got the money, you got $400, which one should I get? I can get either one. Which one should I get? I think the A1 is going to be the safer buy. I think it's going to be the safer buy. But like I said, if you get the 5M, you'll save yourself $100. You can use that $100 to get yourself some more filament. You can cover all the colors that you might want to start off with. You can get yourself an additional nozzle. You can start things off with more to have fun with, as opposed to the A1, where, you're spending more money in the beginning, then you have to keep spending money to get to the same point that you're going to already be at with the Flashforge printer. They're both great printers, okay? I can't stress that enough. But the A1 is the better printer, in my opinion. All right. So I don't really think that you can go wrong with either one, but that's my take on it. So I know that this was a longer type of video, sort of like a little podcasty style, but I hope I was able to help you out in trying to determine which printer might be right for you. But no matter which one you choose, you have made a really good choice. So that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching. Till next time, take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you soon.